Boss challenged a mechanic, saying, "Fix this engine and I'll marry you." And she did it. Emily Johnson felt her hands tremble with anger as she heard the laughter echoing through the meeting room. The director's comment had been cruel, humiliating, but she couldn't back down now. 3 months ago, that engine had cost the automaker a $15 million contract, and at least 8 specialists had already declared the problem impossible to solve. That's when Michael Reynolds, the company's arrogant director, pointed his finger at her in the middle of the tense meeting with all the executives present. "Fix this engine that broke 3 months ago, and I'll marry you in front of everyone," he said, provoking nervous laughter from the suited men around the table. Emily swallowed hard. She was the only woman in that room, the only technician among so many managers, and she felt the weight of everyone's eyes on her. At 26, she had spent her entire life proving she could work with engines as well as any man. "I accept," she replied, in the firmest voice she could muster. Silence took over the room. Michael blinked several times, clearly not expecting this response. He had made the proposal as a tasteless joke, a way to mock the only woman on the technical team. "You accept," he stammered. "Yes, I accept. But when I succeed, you'll keep your word, in front of everyone who's here." Emily looked around, memorizing every face present. "And I want a fair deadline. 2 months. The production manager, Robert Thompson, a 50-year-old man with a grey mustache, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Emily, maybe you should reconsider this. That engine—" "That engine what?" she interrupted, feeling her irritation grow. "You think because I'm a woman I can't do what a man does?" Michael composed himself, adjusting his dark blue tie. He couldn't back down now, not in front of his subordinates. At 32, he had inherited the company from his father 2 years earlier, and constantly felt the pressure to prove he deserved to be there. "All right. 2 months, he agreed, extending his hand. "But if you don't succeed, you accept the transfer to the administrative department. No more workshop work." Emily shook his hand firmly, feeling the soft skin of someone who had never dirtied his hands with grease. His contrasted with hers, calloused from years of handling tools and heavy parts. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. That afternoon, Emily went down to the warehouse where the problematic engine was kept. The place smelled of oil and metal, a scent that had always calmed her since childhood. She had grown up in her adoptive father's workshop, Old Jim's, after being orphaned at 15. He found her sleeping on a park bench in Queens, thin and scared, and decided to take care of her as if she were his own daughter. The engine was on a special workbench, covered by a grey tarp. When Emily removed it, she could see the full complexity of the problem. It was a prototype hybrid engine, something too innovative for a mid-sized automaker like Reynolds Motors. The parts gleamed under the fluorescent light, but something was clearly wrong. She ran her fingers over the structure, feeling each component. She had studied mechanical engineering at night while working days at Old Jim's workshop, but she had never seen anything as sophisticated as that. "Complicated, huh?" Emily turned and saw Mrs. Wilson, the company's senior secretary, a lady with greying hair who had worked there for over 20 years. She carried a steaming cup of coffee and offered it to the young woman. "Do you know anything about this engine?" asked Emily, gratefully accepting the coffee. Mrs. Wilson looked around, checking they were alone before whispering, "That was Michael's father's project. He worked on this engine for 3 years before he passed. The boy felt the pressure to finish what his father started." "And what happened? Why did it break?" "No one knows for sure. It worked perfectly in tests, but during the investor demonstration, it just stopped. It was a terrible embarrassment." Emily drank her coffee, processing the information. So it wasn't just any engine, but something personal for Michael. That explained why he was so nervous at the meeting. "His mother, Mrs. Reynolds, keeps pressuring him to get married soon," continued Mrs. Wilson, lowering her voice further. "She thinks that's the only way he'll mature and take proper care of the company. That's why he made that crazy proposal." "He didn't want me to accept," Emily realized. "Of course not. But now you're both in a complicated situation. Emily finished her coffee and handed back the cup. Mrs. Wilson was right, but she couldn't back out now. It had become a matter of honor. During the following days, Emily arrived early and left late from the company. She completely disassembled the engine, cataloguing every part, every connection, every wire. Her hands turned black with grease, and she often forgot to eat, so focused was she on the work. Michael started appearing at the warehouse daily. At first, clearly to mock, but his visits became more frequent and his comments less sarcastic. "Found anything?" he asked one Thursday afternoon, watching Emily bent over the injection system. "Not yet, but there's something strange here." She pointed to a series of cut wires. "This doesn't look accidental." Michael approached and Emily smelled the expensive cologne he wore, something completely different from the industrial environment of the warehouse. "Are you suggesting someone sabotaged the engine?" "I'm suggesting these wires didn't cut themselves." Emily straightened up, wiping her hands on the blue jumpsuit she wore every day. "The question is, who would do that, and why?" "Maybe you're seeing things that aren't there," Michael sighed, running his hand through his neatly cut dark hair. "My father tested this engine hundreds of times. If there was sabotage, he would have found it." "Was your father an engineer?" "Yes, one of the best. He worked in Germany for 10 years before returning to America and setting up this company." Emily noticed a sadness in Michael's voice that he tried to hide. She knew that feeling, the pressure of living up to the expectations of someone no longer there. How did he pass?" she asked gently. Michael was silent for a long moment, looking at the engine as if it were a ghost from the past. "Heart attack, at 58. Right here in this warehouse working on this engine." He swallowed hard. "The doctors said he was exhausted, too stressed. My mother always blamed this project." Emily felt a tightness in her chest. Now she understood why fixing that engine was so important to Michael, and also why his mother wanted him to get married and stop working himself to death like his father. "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. "No need. It's been 2 years now." Michael turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "Emily." "Yes?" "If you can fix this engine, it won't just be a favor to me. It'll be for him too." That night, Emily worked later than usual. Michael's words had changed everything. It was no longer just about a professional challenge or a forced marriage. It was about honoring the memory of someone who dedicated the last years of his life trying to create something revolutionary. Around 10 at night, when the warehouse was silent and dark, Emily heard footsteps. She hid behind a workbench and saw Robert Thompson, the production manager, entering with a flashlight. The man went straight to the engine, removed some tools from his pocket, and began tampering with parts that Emily had carefully organized during the day. "What are you doing?" Emily shouted, emerging from her hiding spot. Robert jumped, nearly dropping the flashlight. "Emily, you scared me. I was just checking your progress." "Checking by messing with the parts," she approached, seeing that he had altered the position of several connections. "You were sabotaging my work." "Don't be paranoid. You were just, what? Trying to make me look bad?" Emily's anger grew with each second. "It was you who cut those wires, wasn't it?" Robert put the tools back in his pocket, trying to stay calm. "Look, girl, you don't understand the situation. This engine can't be fixed. There are things at play that you can't imagine." "What things?" "The rival company, Southern Motors, is interested in this technology. They offered me a considerable amount for the information, but only if the project is completely abandoned." Emily felt a chill in her stomach. Robert was selling company secrets to the competitors. "You're betraying Michael." "I'm being practical. This company has no future anyway. The boy doesn't have half the competence of his father. It's better to save what can be saved." "And destroy years of work for that?" "The work was already destroyed when the old man had the heart attack. The engine never worked right anyway." Emily clenched her fists. Robert's betrayal was even worse because he had worked side by side with Michael's father. "Get out of here now." "Or what? You're going to tell the little boss?" Robert laughed scornfully. "Who do you think he'll believe? The orphan girl who appeared out of nowhere, or the manager who's worked here for 15 years? He walked out slowly, leaving Emily alone with her doubts and discoveries. She spent the rest of the night reorganizing the parts Robert had altered, but a seed of suspicion had been planted in her mind. The next day, Emily went to Mrs. Wilson. "Do you know Robert Thompson well?" she asked, pretending casualness. "I do. Why?" "Just curious. He seems kind of strange with me." Wilson furrowed her brow, thoughtful. "You know, there's one thing that always bothered me. When the engine broke during the demonstration, Robert was the last one to work on it before the test. He said he was doing a final check. And you think, I don't know, dear, but he's been very nervous lately. And last week I saw him talking in the parking lot with a man I recognized. It was the technical director of Southern Motors." Emily felt her stomach turn. Her suspicions were being confirmed. Robert wasn't just sabotaging her current work, but he had probably sabotaged the original engine too. "Mrs. Wilson, can you help me with something?" "Of course, dear. I need you to keep Robert away from the warehouse for a few days. Make up anything, meetings, paperwork, anything." "I can try, but why?" "Because I think I know how to fix the engine, but I need to work without interference." Emily spent the entire weekend in the warehouse. She had noticed a pattern in the damage Robert was causing. He wasn't sabotaging randomly, but specific parts that would prevent the engine from functioning properly. On Sunday night, she had a revelation. All the sabotaged components were part of the engine's synchronization system. If she could recalibrate everything correctly, maybe she could make it work. On Monday, Michael appeared earlier than usual. "How's the progress?" he asked, but this time his voice sounded different, less mocking and more anxious. "Good. Very well, actually." Emily smiled for the first time in weeks. "I think I've figured out what the problem was." "Really?" Michael's eyes lit up. "Really? But I need to tell you something. About Robert." Emily explained everything she had uncovered about the sabotage and the manager's betrayal. Michael listened in silence, his face growing more serious by the minute. "My God," he whispered when she finished. "Robert has worked here since before I was born. My father trusted him completely. And that's exactly why he was able to do what he did without raising suspicions. Are you sure about what you're saying?" "I am. And I can prove it." Emily showed the damaged parts, explained the pattern of sabotage, and recounted the conversation she had overheard. Michael turned pale. If this is true, Robert is responsible for the company's humiliation, the loss of the contract, and... He stopped, the realization hitting him like a punch. "And may have contributed to the stress that caused my father's heart attack. We can't prove that last part," Emily said gently, "but we can prove the rest. What do you suggest? Let me finish the repair. When the engine is running, we confront Robert with the evidence. And if he denies everything, then we'll have to find a way to catch him in the act." Michael ran a hand over his face, visibly shaken. "Emily, I don't know how to thank you. You didn't have to tell me this. You could have stayed quiet and let it slide." "No, I couldn't. This is about more than a stupid challenge or a forced marriage. It's about justice." In that moment, something shifted between them. Emily saw Michael not as the arrogant boss from the meeting, but as a young man trying to honor his father's memory and save the family business. And Michael saw Emily not as a troublesome employee, but as someone with integrity who was fighting for a just cause. "Can I help you?" he asked. "With the engine, I mean. You know mechanics?" "My father taught me the basics when I was a kid. After he got sick, I kind of avoided this warehouse, but maybe it's time to come back." Emily smiled. "Of course. You can help." They worked side by side for the rest of the week. Michael proved skilled with basic tools and had an impressive memory of his father's teachings. Emily discovered that beneath the executive demeanor, he was a kind and dedicated person. "Why did you make that stupid proposal in the meeting?" she asked one afternoon, while they were testing the electrical system. Michael stopped what he was doing, embarrassed. "Because I'm an idiot, really. My mother keeps pressuring me to get married, the executives keep questioning my authority because I'm young, and I felt cornered. I wanted to show that I was in charge there. And you chose the only woman in the room as your target. Yeah. And I regretted it the next minute. You didn't deserve that." "Why? Because I'm a woman?" No, because you're a competent professional that I treated as a joke. It has nothing to do with your gender. Emily stopped working and looked at him. It was the first time someone at the company had treated her simply as a professional, without highlighting the fact that she was a woman in a male-dominated environment. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "For what?" "For seeing me as a person." Friday arrived and Emily was confident the engine would work. She had fixed all the sabotage issues and made some additional adjustments based on her own observations. "Ready?" asked Michael, holding the ignition key. "Ready?" He turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, and then roared to life with a perfect, steady sound. The noise was music to Emily's ears. "We did it!" Michael shouted, raising his arms. Emily felt a wave of relief and pride. She had done it. The engine was running perfectly. "Now shall we confront Robert?" she asked. "Let's go." They found Robert in his office, reviewing reports. When he saw Michael and Emily entering together, his expression changed. "Michael, Emily, how can I help you?" "You can start by explaining why you sabotaged my father's engine." Michael went straight to the point. "What?" "I didn't—" "We have evidence, Robert," Emily interrupted. "And the engine is working now. We fixed all the damage you did." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, we do." Michael approached the desk. "The secret meeting with Southern Motors. The sabotaged parts. Everything." Robert realized he was cornered. His posture changed, becoming more aggressive. "So what? Do you think this company has a future? Your father was a dreamer, Michael. That engine would never work." "But it's working now," Emily pointed out. "Only because I stopped interfering." "But Southern Motors will launch something similar in 6 months. They have technology and resources you'll never have." "Technology that you sold to them." Michael was visibly furious. "I was practical. I saved what could be saved." "You betrayed my family. You betrayed my father. And you may have contributed to what happened to him." Robert stood up, irritated. "Don't blame me for your father's heart attack. He worked himself to death because he was stubborn and wouldn't listen to sensible advice." That was the last straw for Michael. He lunged at Robert, but Emily held him back. "It's not worth it," she said. "He's not worth it." Michael took a deep breath, composing himself. "You're fired, Robert, and we'll investigate everything you've done. If we find more irregularities, we'll take appropriate measures. You'll regret this, kid. Without me, this company won't last 6 months." "We'll see," said Michael, opening the door. "Now get out." Robert gathered his belongings and left, but not before giving Emily a hateful look. "Watch out for that one," he said to Michael. "A woman who works in a garage is no good for anything else." Emily felt anger rising, but Michael was faster. "That one just saved my family's company, and she has more competence in her pinky finger than you've had in your entire life. Now get out of here before I call security." Robert finally left, leaving a heavy silence in the air. "Thank you," said Emily. "For what?" "For defending me. It was the least I could do after everything." The following Monday, Michael called a new meeting with all the executives. Emily was nervous, knowing she would have to face that room full of men in suits again. "As you know," Michael began, "it's been a week since Emily accepted my challenge to fix my father's engine." The executives murmured among themselves, remembering the scene from the previous week. Not only did she manage to fix the engine, but she also discovered that Robert Thompson was sabotaging the project and selling information to our competitors. The murmuring in the room grew louder. Some executives seemed shocked, others skeptical. For that reason, Robert has been fired, and Emily will be promoted to Technical Development Manager. Emily blinked, surprised. That part hadn't been discussed. "But what about the marriage?" asked one of the executives. "You promised you would marry her." Michael looked at Emily, who discreetly nodded. "It's true, I promised. And I will keep my word. If Emily accepts." All eyes turned to her. Emily stood up, feeling her heart race. "I accept the promotion," she said, "but I don't accept the marriage." The room fell completely silent. "I don't accept because I don't want to marry out of obligation or because of a stupid challenge. If I ever marry someone, it will be for love, not because of a bet." Michael smiled, seeming relieved. "In that case," he said, "how about we start as co-workers and see what happens? That sounds reasonable, Emily smiled back. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. This really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, the following months were transformative for Reynolds Motors. With Robert out of the way and Emily in technical leadership, the company began developing a new engine line based on Michael's father's original design. Emily implemented significant changes in the company culture. She created a trainee program that accepted applicants regardless of gender and established new safety and quality protocols that impressed even the most demanding clients. Michael, in turn, proved to be a much more effective leader than he had imagined. Without Robert's sabotage and with Emily by his side, he managed to secure new contracts and expand the company's operations. The relationship between them developed naturally. They spent long hours working together, discussing ideas, solving problems. Emily discovered that Michael was intelligent, dedicated, and had a sense of humor that emerged when he felt comfortable. Michael, for his part, was daily impressed by Emily's competence and determination. She not only understood engines like few others, but had a strategic vision that helped the company reposition itself in the market. You know, the company has doubled its revenue since we started working together, Michael said one afternoon, reviewing the monthly reports. It was teamwork, replied Emily, adjusting a part in the new prototype they were developing. No, it was your doing. You transformed this place. Emily stopped what she was doing and looked at him. We transformed it. You gave me the opportunity. After publicly humiliating you. After having the courage to admit you were wrong. Michael approached the workbench where Emily was working. Emily, can I ask you a question? Of course. Have you ever thought about us, not because of that stupid promise, but as people? Emily felt her face grow warm. The truth was, she had thought about it many times in recent weeks. Sometimes, she admitted. And you? Every day, he replied sincerely. But I don't want you to feel pressured. You've already been through too much because of me. Michael? Yes? Stop talking and kiss me. He didn't need to be told twice. The kiss was sweet, full of feelings that had been growing for months. When they parted, both were smiling. Does this mean we're dating? Michael asked. It means we're seeing what happens, Emily laughed, as you said yourself. 6 months later, Emily was in the office when Mrs. Reynolds, Michael's mother, appeared at the company. The lady had avoided visiting since the meeting incident, but now she seemed to have a mission. Emily, may I speak with you? Of course, Mrs. Reynolds. How can I help you? I want to apologize, the lady said, completely surprising Emily, for what I said the first time we met. It was prejudice on my part. You don't need to apologize. Yes, I do. You saved my family's company, and more importantly, you've made my son happy in a way I've never seen before. Emily smiled, touched by the woman's sincerity. He makes me happy too. May I tell you something? When my husband was alive, he always said he wanted Michael to find someone who understood his passion for mechanics. I think he would be very happy to know that someone is you. Thank you for saying that, Mrs. Reynolds. It means a lot to me. And Emily, when you two decide to really get married, you have my blessing. Emily laughed, remembering the first disastrous proposal. If that ever happens, it will be very different from the first time. 1 year after the fateful meeting, Reynolds Motors had become one of the leading engine manufacturers in the region. The project by Michael's father not only worked perfectly, but had spawned an entire family of new products. Emily was in her new office. She had earned her own room with a view of the warehouse when Michael appeared at the door. Got a minute? He asked. For you, always. He entered and closed the door behind him. Emily noticed he seemed nervous. Did something happen? Yes. No. He took a deep breath. Emily, do you remember the first promise I made to you? The one to marry me if I fixed the engine? How could I forget? Yeah, well, I was thinking, you fulfilled your part of the deal long ago, and I still haven't fulfilled mine. Emily arched her eyebrows, intrigued. Michael Reynolds, you're not suggesting that? I am. He knelt and pulled a small box from his pocket. But this time it's different. This time it's because I love you, because I can't imagine my life without you, because you're my partner in everything." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. "Marry me?" he asked, opening the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. "For real this time?" "Yes," she whispered, extending her hand. "Yes, I will." When Michael slipped the ring onto her finger, Emily thought about the entire journey that had brought them there. It started with a cruel challenge in a meeting room, went through sabotage, betrayal, hard work and dedication, and led to true love. "You know what's funny?" she said, admiring the ring. "What?" "If someone had told me this story 2 years ago, I'd have said it was impossible. Arrogant boss challenges employee to fix an impossible engine. She accepts, and they end up falling in love. Sounds like a fairy tale, but it happened. It did," she smiled, "and it was the best thing that ever happened to me." They married 6 months later, in a simple but moving ceremony. Old Jim, Emily's adoptive father, gave her away at the altar with tears in his eyes. Mrs. Reynolds was in the front row, beaming, and all the employees of Reynolds Motors were present to celebrate the couple who had transformed the company. During the party, Emily looked around and saw smiling faces, people dancing, celebrating. She thought about the engine she had fixed, the confidence she had placed in her own abilities, the courage she had to face a hostile environment. "What are you thinking about?" asked Michael, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her. "I'm thinking that broken engine was the best thing that happened to us." "How so?" "If it hadn't broken, you never would have made that stupid proposal. And I never would have had the chance to prove what I'm capable of. And I never would have discovered that the woman of my life was working just a few feet away from my office." "Fate?" joked Emily. "I prefer to call it stubbornness. Your stubbornness in not giving up, my stubbornness in keeping a promise, and the stubbornness of 2 hearts that recognized each other." Emily turned in her husband's arms and kissed him, feeling complete. 5 years later, Reynolds Motors had become the national leader in automotive innovation. Emily was vice president of development and had been recognized as one of the most influential women in the American industry. They had 2 children, James, named after Emily's adoptive father, and Grace, named after the mother-in-law who had become one of her biggest supporters. The engine that had started it all still worked perfectly, now on display in the company lobby with a plaque that read, "In memory of James Reynolds, visionary, father, and inspiration." Emily often stopped in front of it, especially on difficult days, remembering the journey that had brought her there. Sometimes new employees would ask about the story behind the engine, and she would tell them everything. The cruel challenge, the sabotage, the perseverance, and how a moment of humiliation turned into the greatest blessing of her life. "Life sometimes puts us before challenges that seem impossible," she always said at the end of the story. "But it's in these moments that we discover what we're truly capable of. Never give up. You're stronger than you think." One night, already late, Emily was alone in the warehouse working on a new project when Michael appeared with 2 cups of coffee. "Still working?" he asked. "You know me. When I get an idea, I can't stop." She gratefully accepted the coffee. "It's one of the things I love most about you." Michael sat beside her on the workbench. "Your passion for what you do." "I learned from the best," Emily smiled, referring to Michael's father. "He would be proud. Of you, of us, of everything we've built." "You really think so?" "I'm sure. You know, I found a letter he wrote before passing away. It was kept in his desk at the office." "What did it say?" "That he hoped I would find someone who loved engineering as much as he did. Someone who understood that building things with your own hands is one of the purest forms of love." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. Was he talking about me? He was talking about anyone who had that passion, but yes, I think he was talking about you too, in a way. Emily looked around the warehouse, at the organized tools, the ongoing projects, at the whole life they had built together. "You know something," she said. "I used to think my greatest achievement would be proving that a woman can be as good as a man in any profession. And isn't it? It's one of the achievements, but the greatest was discovering that I can be myself, completely, and still be loved. I didn't have to change who I was to earn my place. I just needed the courage to show it. Michael kissed her forehead. And I needed to learn to look beyond my prejudices, to recognize the extraordinary woman right in front of me. Do you think our children will follow in our footsteps? I don't know, but I'll teach them to never give up on their dreams, no matter what others say. And I'll teach them that respect is earned through hard work and integrity, not through arrogance or social position. They stayed silent for a few minutes, watching the warehouse that had been the stage for so many transformations. Emily. Yes? Thank you. For what? For accepting that stupid challenge, for not giving up when things got tough, for making me a better person. Thank you, she replied, for having the courage to change your mind about me, for giving me the chance to show who I really was, and for making me the most important promise of my life. Which one? That we would always be partners, in everything. Emily smiled, remembering the day she had made that promise on their honeymoon. Always, she confirmed. Years later, when Emily was already in her 40s, she was invited to give a lecture at a university about overcoming adversity and female leadership. She accepted because she knew her story could inspire other women. Do you want to know how I got where I am? She asked the audience full of young women. It was by accepting a challenge that everyone considered impossible. It was by holding my head high when they tried to humiliate me. It was by working harder than anyone expected. But it was also by having the luck to find people who knew how to recognize my value, she continued. Because no matter how competent we are, sometimes we need someone to give us a chance. A young woman raised her hand. How did you deal with sexism in the workplace? Emily smiled, remembering all the times she had to prove her worth. Working twice as hard as any man and being impeccable in everything I did. It's not fair that we have to do this, but sometimes it's necessary. And when we succeed, we pave the way for those who come after. Have you ever felt like giving up? Many times. Especially when I discovered the sabotage, I thought, why am I killing myself to prove something to people who don't even respect me? But then I remembered, I wasn't doing it just for myself. I was doing it for the memory of someone who had dedicated years of their life to that project, and I was doing it for all the women who would come after me. What was the most difficult moment? Emily thought for a moment. The most difficult moment wasn't technical, it was emotional. It was when I realized that even after proving my competence, some people would never fully accept me. I had to learn that their opinion didn't define my worth. And the most rewarding? The most rewarding was seeing the company transform. Today, 40% of our technical team consists of women. We have an on-site daycare, expanded maternity leave policies, and an environment where anyone can grow based on merit, not gender. After the talk, a young woman approached her. Professor Emily, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Did you really marry the boss who challenged you? Emily laughed. Yes, I did, but not because he was my boss or because of that challenge. I married him because we discovered we were compatible as people. He had to learn to respect me and I had to learn to forgive. And are you happy? Very happy. But our happiness didn't come automatically. We had to work on it, day after day, just like we worked on the company. Relationships need maintenance too, like engines. The young woman smiled. Thank you, your story gives me hope. What kind of hope? That I can be an engineer and still find someone who values me for who I am, not in spite of who I am. Emily felt her heart warm. You can. And when you find that person, you'll know they're right, because they'll celebrate your achievements, not feel threatened by them. That night, Emily told Michael about the conversation. I'm glad you agreed to give the talk, he said. Your story could change many people's lives. Our story, Emily corrected, because without you, there wouldn't have been transformation. You could have remained arrogant and sexist forever. But I didn't. No. And that made all the difference. Emily? Yes. Do you regret anything? Emily thought carefully before answering. I regret the time we lost being too proud to admit we liked each other. I regret not confronting Robert sooner. But I don't regret accepting that challenge, no matter how humiliating it was. Why? Because that challenge brought me to you. And you taught me that I can be strong and vulnerable at the same time. I can be a competent professional and still need partnership. I can lead and still accept support. You taught me things too, like what? That true leadership isn't about imposition, it's about inspiration. That competence has no gender. That sometimes the person who questions our decisions the most is the one who loves us the most. Emily laughed. I question your decisions because I care about you and the company. I know, and that's why you're the best partner I could have. Years passed, and Emily became president of Reynolds Motors when Michael decided to dedicate more time to family and social projects. She was the first woman to lead a major automaker in the country, an achievement that graced the covers of many magazines. In every interview, she always mentioned the engine she had repaired years before. That engine represents more than just a challenge overcome, she would say. It represents proof that when we believe in ourselves and have perseverance, we can transform any situation, no matter how difficult it may seem. The engine, by the way, still worked perfectly. Emily Johnson had established a tradition. Every new employee at the company would go through the warehouse and hear the story of the engine, not as an example of how to tolerate humiliation, but as an example of how to turn adversity into opportunity. On her 50th birthday, Emily organized a big party at the company. Current and former employees were present, including Mrs. Wilson, already retired but still vibrant at 70 years old. "Remember when you first arrived here, girl?" the lady said to Emily. "So determined, but also so lost." Lost? You didn't yet know how special you were. You thought you had to prove it to others, when in reality you only needed to believe in yourself. You always knew, didn't you? Always. From the very first day, you had something that others didn't. What? A genuine passion for what you did, and the courage to face anything. During the party, Michael Reynolds gave a moving speech. 15 years ago, I made the dumbest proposal of my life to the smartest woman I've ever known, he said, eliciting laughter from the audience. And since then, she hasn't stopped surprising me. Not only did she fix an impossible engine, but she fixed an entire company. And she fixed me too. The audience applauded, and Emily felt her eyes welling up. Emily isn't just my wife and the mother of my children, Michael continued. She is my daily inspiration. She is living proof that when we have talent, determination, and integrity, we can overcome any obstacle. When it was Emily's turn to speak, she was moved to see so many beloved faces. When I first set foot in this company, I was furious, she began. Furious for being humiliated, furious for having to constantly prove my worth, furious for living in a world that still doubted women's abilities. But I discovered that anger, when channeled correctly, can be a powerful fuel. I used my anger to work harder, to be better, to never give up. I also found that sometimes people can change. Michael isn't the same arrogant man who made that proposal 15 years ago. And I'm not the same defensive woman who accepted the challenge. We grew together. Today I look at this company and see much more than an engine factory. I see a place where dreams come true, where merit is recognized, where every person can be authentic and still be successful. And it all started with a broken engine and a ridiculous promise. Proof that we never know where our brave decisions will lead us. The party lasted until late, and Emily spent the night talking with employees, reminiscing about stories, making plans for the future. When they were finally alone, Michael and Emily walked to the warehouse where it all began. 15 years, said Michael. It feels like a whole lifetime and a minute at the same time. That's because they were 15 years well lived, replied Emily, full of challenges, achievements, growth. Did you imagine yourself here in this position when you agreed to fix that engine? Never. I just wanted to prove that I could do the job. I didn't imagine it would change my entire life. And now, what are your next dreams? Emily looked around the warehouse thinking, I want our daughter Grace to grow up in a world where she never has to prove she's capable just because she's a woman. I want our son James to naturally respect women as equals. And I want this company to continue being an example for others. And personally, I want to keep learning. I want to travel more with you. I want to see our children grow up. I want to grow old by your side, still arguing about engines and falling in love a little more each day." Michael hugged her. "Do you know what my favorite part of our story is?" he asked. "What?" "That it's not over. Every day is still a new page, a new challenge, a new opportunity for us to grow together." Emily smiled, thinking about how unpredictable life was. 15 years ago, if someone had told her that one day she would be president of a large company, married to the man who had publicly humiliated her, mother of 2 wonderful children, she would have thought it impossible. But there she was, living a life that surpassed her wildest dreams. "Michael?" "Yes?" "Thank you for making that stupid proposal." He laughed. "Thank you for accepting it. Even knowing it would change our lives forever, especially for that." They remained embraced in the silent warehouse, surrounded by tools, projects, and memories. Outside, the city slept, unaware that in that place, one of the most beautiful stories of overcoming and love in the region had been born. Emily looked at the engine that still worked perfectly after all these years. It was no longer just a mechanical part, but a symbol of perseverance, transformation, and proof that the greatest challenges sometimes carry the greatest gifts. "Ready to go home?" asked Michael. "Ready," replied Emily. They walked hand in hand toward the car, leaving the silent but history-filled warehouse. Tomorrow would be a new day, with new challenges and new opportunities. But they would be ready, as they always had been, to face everything together. The story that had begun with humiliation and challenge had transformed into a saga of love, growth, and overcoming. And the most beautiful part is that it was a true, real story, possible for anyone willing to accept their own impossible challenges. Because sometimes, the moments that hurt us the most are the ones that transform us the most. And sometimes, the people who provoke us the most are the ones who love us the most. And sometimes, what seems like an end is just a beginning in disguise. Emily and Michael drove home under a starry sky, knowing they had built something greater than a company or a family. They had built a legacy of courage, integrity, and love that would last for generations. And it had all started with a broken engine and an impossible promise. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you think Emily made the right decision by accepting that humiliating challenge? We look forward to reading your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other exciting stories.